The Greek drama began as a religious observance in honor of Dionysus. To the Greeks, this god personified both the spring and the vintage, the latter a very important time of year in a vine-growing country, and he was a symbol to them of that power there is in man of rising out of himself, of being impelled onwards by a joy within him that he cannot explain, but which makes him go forward, walking, as it were, on the wings of the wind, of the spirit that fills him with a deep sense of worship. We call this power enthusiasm, a Greek word which simply means the God within us. From very early times, stories of his life were recited at the religious festivals held in honor of Dionysus, and then stories of the other gods and of the ancient heroes were told as well. It was from these beginnings that the drama came. Originally, the story was told in the form of a song, chanted at first by everyone taking part in the festival, and later by a chorus of about 50 performers, and at intervals in the song the leader would recite part of the story by himself. By degrees the recitation became of greater importance than the song. It grew longer, and after a time 2 people took part in it and then 3. At the same time the chorus became smaller and of less importance in the action of the drama, until at last it could consist of only 15 performers. A Greek drama was in many ways much simpler than a modern drama. There were fewer characters, and usually only 3 speaking actors were allowed on the stage at once. There was only one story told, and there was nothing to take the attention of the audience away from this. The chorus, though it no longer told the story, was very important, for it set the atmosphere of the play, and lyrics of haunting loveliness hinted at the tragedy that could not be averted because of terrible deeds done in the past, or if, indeed, there might be any help, the imagination was carried forward on wings of hope. The chorus also served another purpose. In a modern drama, when the tragedy of a situation becomes almost too great for the audience to bear, relief is often found in some comic, or partly comic, episode which is introduced to slacken the tension. Shakespeare does this constantly. But comic episodes were felt to be out of place in a Greek drama, and therefore when a tragic scene had taken place, the chorus followed it by a song of purest poetry. In one play of Euripides, a terrible scene of tragedy was followed by a song in which the chorus prayed for escape from such sorrows on the wings of a bird to a land where all was peace and beauty. In the great Greek dramas, the chorus is a constant reminder that, though they cannot understand or explain them, there are other powers in the world than the wild passions of men. The great dramatic festival in Athens was held in the spring in the theater of Dionysus, to the southeast of the Acropolis. The theater in Athens never became an everyday amusement, as it is today, but was always directly connected with the worship of Dionysus, and the performances were always preceded by a sacrifice. The festival was only held once a year, and whilst it lasted the whole city kept holiday. Originally, admission to the theater was free, but the crowds became so great and there was such confusion and sometimes fighting in the rush for good seats that the state decided to charge an admission fee and tickets had to be bought beforehand. But even then there were no reserved seats, except for certain officials who sat in the front row. In the time of Pericles, complaints were made that the poorer citizens could not afford to buy tickets, and so important was the drama then considered that it was ordered that tickets should be given free to all who applied for them. The theater is a great semicircle on the slope of the Acropolis, with rows of stone seats on which about 18,000 spectators can sit. The front row consists of marble chairs, the only seats in the theater which have backs, and these are reserved for the priests of Dionysus and the chief magistrates. Beyond the front row is a circular space called the orchestra, where the chorus sings, and in the center of which stands the altar of Dionysus. Behind the orchestra is the stage on which the actors will act, at the back of which is a building painted to look like the front of a temple or a palace, to which the actors retire when they are not wanted on the stage or have to change their costumes. That is the whole theater and all its stage scenery. Overhead is the deep blue sky, the Acropolis rises up behind, and the olive-laden hills are seen in the distance. Much will have to be left to the imagination, but the very simplicity of the outward surroundings will make the audience give all their attention to the play and the acting. When the play begins, there will only be 3 actors on the stage at once. They will wear very elaborate costumes, and a strange-looking wooden sole called a kothornoi or buskin, about 6 inches high, on their shoes, to make them look taller and more impressive, and over their faces a curious mask with a wide mouth, so that everyone in that vast audience will hear them. There will be no curtain, and the play are not divided into different acts. When there is a pause in the action, the chorus will fill up the time with their song. If it is tragedy, we shall not see the final catastrophe on the stage, but a messenger will appear who will give us an account of what has happened. All this is very different from the way in which a modern play is given, but some of the greatest dramas the world possesses were written by Athenian dramatists and acted on this Athenian stage more than 2,000 years ago. In the opening speech of this play, Iphigenia very briefly tells her story up to the moment when the play begins. Just as the Greeks had been ready to sail for Troy, they were windbound at Aulis. The wise men were consulted as to the meaning of this, and how the gods, who must in some ways have been offended, might be appeased, so that fair winds might send them on their way. Calchas, the seer, told them that Artemis demanded the sacrifice of Iphigenia, daughter of Agamemnon, king of Argos, the great leader of the host, and her father sent for her accordingly. The maiden was at home with her mother, and the messenger who was sent to Argos to bring her was charged to say that her father desired to wed her to the hero Achilles. She came and the sacrifice was offered, but at the supreme moment, Artemis carried Iphigenia away and placed her in the land of the Tauris, a wild and barbarous tribe, as their priestess. These Tauris had an image of Artemis in a temple, to which they sacrificed all strangers who were cast on their shores, and it was the duty of the priestess to consecrate each victim before he was slain. Here, performing this rite, had Iphigenia lived for more than 10 years, but never yet had a Greek come to this wild land. She knew, of course, nothing of what had happened at Troy or afterwards. She did not know that on his return home her father had been slain by Clytemnestra his wife, or that Orestes, her brother, had avenged that death by slaughtering his own mother, after which deed he had wandered from place to place pursued by the relentless torment of the Furies. Bitter against the Greeks for having willed her sacrifice at Aulis, Iphigenia says of herself that she is turned to stone, and has no pity left in her, and she half hopes that the day will come when a Greek shall be brought to her to be offered in his turn to the goddess. In the meantime, Orestes, tormented beyond endurance by the Furies, had gone to the oracle of Apollo to ask how he might be purified from his sin, and Apollo had told him to go to the land of the Tauris and bring back to Attica the image of Artemis his sister, so that it might no longer be stained by the blood of the human sacrifices. And so, it comes about that Orestes is the first Greek who will be brought to Iphigenia for sacrifice to Artemis. It is at this moment that the play opens.